just kind of, again, emphasizing this is an opportunity for you guys to ask questions or get help or support. I'm gonna give you a couple of resources like for recipes today, which are kind of useful, I think, when we're doing this kind of thing. And then I was going to talk to you about something else. Give me a second here. And it's kind of tough when we have busy weeks for everyone to get on. But what's nice is you can go back and watch this. Later. Okay. So no questions, no struggles, no wins. I like talking about wins often. That's a thing that we can really work on. And you guys can chat if you're having trouble with, being able to communicate. Like Rosa, can you hear us?
Nobody's moving, so I can't tell if it can hear.
I mean, I can hear.
Okay, great.
So can I ask one question about the fasting from 8 p.m. to noon?
Yeah.
Is that something we should strive to do every day? Or I know in the email it said to try twice a week to get to 10 a.m. or noon.
Yeah, so I actually don't recommend that you just dive into doing this every day of the week. And what the research is showing is you don't have to do it every day of the week, but twice a week is a good goal. And especially, even if you're working towards doing it more often, twice a week is probably a great start. And that way you're not disrupting everything too much and it doesn't become so uncomfortable potentially that you wouldn't follow through with it. So one of the techniques that I found that's useful is if you happen to wake up in the morning, you ever have those mornings where you're not very hungry? Not a lot of urge, pick that day, right? So make that day the day. And then just see how long you can prolong that first meal without getting super uncomfortable. What will happen when you do this regularly, I can tell you for a fact, is that it will become very easy to do. You will not have any cravings or blood sugar dips typically once, especially if your diet's pretty clean and you're not having that kind of yo-yo blood sugar. It gets really pretty easy to just kind of hold off to break your fast, right? To have that first meal. And so, go ahead.
No, I did it 3 days in a row. And so,
cool.
I mean, one of the things that can help is when you have the, also do the glass of water first thing in the morning. That helps to kind of take off your appetite a little bit. The only struggle that I had was yesterday, I had a banana at 10:30 because I play full court basketball between 11:30 and 1 o'clock. And I had very little energy.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And, listen to your body. A big part of what we're doing too is paying, like Dan was talking about, becoming aware. A lot of people walk around not super aware of the signals that their body's giving them. So if you notice and you're aware of your body's need and you're like, gosh, my blood sugar feels a little lower, I have a little low energy, maybe something like a banana, which is going to convert into blood sugar pretty quickly. You're going to use it because you're going to actually be active. I think it's listening a little bit better than we normally do, and it has a lot of value. So I think that's fine. I think that was a skillful decision.
Yeah, I didn't know until I played that I was going to have the issue. But I think what you're talking about is on those days, Tuesday, Thursday, that I eat a little bit more before. So I got something to feed off of on there. Also, it was Adrian had the same question, one of the questions I had. So on the approved food list, it says in the proteins, eggs are okay, but on the foods to avoid, it says all eggs.
So I would add, I think that's either a mistake on the way that list was printed, or I think Whole Foods is really a subtraction diet, right? Elimination diet. Is that right, Jose?
Yeah, the AIP one.
Yeah, so eggs are often removed from elimination diets because they can be a problem for some people.
Because
And
eggs are, yeah,
yeah,
go
so
ahead.
as far as allergens, right? And
It's,
so,
it can be.
yeah, go ahead.
So
As-
basically, eggs is okay unless you have an allergy or some medical
Yeah.
reason not to be consuming eggs.
Correct. Because
Okay.
eggs are definitely on the list.
And the other one was about the nuts and seeds was on the food to avoid. But I can get these nuts at Target. They're good in gather line. And there's nothing added to it. There's no coatings. It hasn't been dry roasted or anything. It's just raw nuts in there. So is that why they have it on there? They're worried about additives to it, or is there
Allergens.
something about consuming nuts with your digestion and what you're trying to do with the program?
Yeah, nuts can be an allergen, and because of the shells and skins on them, they can have an anti-nutrient or an irritating component to them.
Okay, because it has no skin, no shells, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's
So
just pure
again,
raw.
it can be a food that's an irritant. It can be, a lot of people have nut allergies. And so that's one of those things that you can avoid. Again, we don't have to be dogmatic. We want to pay attention. We want to, be aware of what we're eating and notice what happens, but we're just doing it for 3 weeks. So it's not a long time. And that'd be more on the AIP version, but yeah.
Mhm. So one of the reasons we're taking this approach on the diet is to kind of look at the glycemic foods, the sugars and a lot of the grains and processed foods have high glycemic effect on our blood sugar, right? Nuts don't do that generally, but they are, like Jose says, they can be an allergen for people. Same with the eggs. So if you're really doing the AIP approach, that's kind of a whole different thing. If you're looking to really lower your inflammation and dig in really deep on finding what your digestive problems are, then that's the approach you would take in a diet like that. Just really remove anything that could be a possibility and then slowly bring those back in.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been able, I've worked what I'm eating. I think I talked to you before I left, I can have a pickle and a dill pickle in the afternoon, and that satisfies my appetite. I mean, I've done an avocado and egg kind of omelet thing as a breakfast, and I did some salads with carrots, and I found a vinaigrette dressing that's like red wine vinegar and oil and garlic and some other stuff like that in there that's tasty, and you put a little honey into it that takes the edge off. Like tonight's dinner is it's baked yams and Brussels sprouts and olive oil, and then a baked chicken with seasoning, and then spaghetti squash with nothing added.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to do. Yes. Do I miss watching my husband eat ice cream? That's difficult, but you get through it.
You can. It's 3 weeks. It's not a huge deal. And then,
No,
as we get to the end, though, I'm going to give you some alternatives to reintroduce things like that. We make ice cream here. We use raw milk and allulose or a bit of honey and natural vanilla. And, it's a great alternative. It's got fat and protein in it, and it's not super sugary, and it's very satisfying. So there are things that we'll talk about, how we can introduce some of these, foods. But again, for these 3 weeks, what we're trying to do, like that's some of the baked goods or the alternative, like, hey, it's gluten-free, whatever. We're trying to avoid these very hyper palatable concoctions and combinations that show up. And that's some of what we're doing here, is just kind of keeping it super simple.
Well, you're actually using natural ingredients instead of, processed food, or if you look at ingredients on boxes, they keep adding stuff to it.
Oh yeah, carrageenan in ice cream.
unnecessarily.
It's in ice cream everywhere. Organic ice cream, carrageenan. These stabilizers and these things that add texture, and they just can't help themselves.
Yes.
The food
Yes.
industry wants to stand out and be more, be the choice, right? Be the choice of the person.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that we can look at.
So Adrian had a question. His mic isn't working.
Oh, yep.
Says his question is on hydration. He usually drinks some non-alcoholic beer. Is there a better option?
Yeah, kombucha. Have like a kombucha. I mean, a non-alcoholic beer, like right now, we're avoiding that. Even though it's alcohol, we would avoid a non-alcoholic beer. The reason being is it's still got all the carbs. They
Yeah.
call it a beer belly for a reason.
They're
And
often,
it is, yeah.
yeah, they're often based on grains too.
Yeah.
Fermenting process is still there.
So that's like Dan was saying, a big thing that we're doing here is we're avoiding overeating these carbohydrates that turn into blood sugar very quickly.
And kombucha, you have to be real careful on that too, because
Yeah.
many of them are really, really sweet.
Yeah.
And so if you do that, really look at the label and find a brand that has very low sugars.
Low sugar, no
stay
added
away.
sugar.
And
Yeah.
no added sugar. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, actually better than doing it, you can go back to that, but like if you're making a long-term change in what you're doing, thing that I like to do is if you like bubbly water, right? So any kind of sparkling water, mineral water, actually, it's a great idea to drink mineral water because most of the water that people are drinking is dead water. It has no mineralization in there. And it can help us absorb the water and become more hydrated. So our cells actually draw the water in rather than just peeing it out. But I love taking bubbly water or mineral water and squeezing lemon lime into it. That's a wonderful alternative. It can feel festive. It tastes pretty good. But that would be my choice during these 3 weeks, is something like that.
Yeah. And there's some great hydration powders too you can get to add to water that have, electrolytes added in and maybe a little bit of flavor. Others do have, some stevia or something like that that's kind of off the list, but it does satiate and really is hydrating because of those electrolytes in there.
Have you been using any particular brand?
I forget the name of the brand. I'll grab the thing here in a second. It's like blue.
Yeah. So Rob Wolf, who's kind of a health food advocate, he actually wrote one of the first books on the paleo diet. He comes with his background's in chemistry, biochemistry. He created one called Element, but I do think it has stevia maybe or monk fruit in it.
Yeah, and it's a little more on the pricey side for
it is pricey. Yeah, and so
yeah,
Ultima. I use Ultima as well too.
Yep, that's what it is.
Thank you, Karen. And yeah, and that one, and actually it's on sale at all the health food stores right now. Everybody's got that 30% off sale going on, whether it's Sprouts or Whole Foods or Vitamin Cottage. So usually it's like $20 for one of these little, it's about $14 right now.
Nice.
So that's a good choice. But does that help? Does some of those questions help? Anybody struggling, like missing? So we heard that seeing our partner eat ice cream can be a bummer. Or not seeing it. Anybody else struggling with cravings or anything else? You want to type it in, Rosa, or?
One second. Is she ready?
But it's pretty common. Like if you have a food, I was mentioning, I love corn chips, that you will get a little bit of oh, I wish I usually would have a little of this right now. And that's good to notice. And something to, so that's the friction, right? That little moment of friction. And a great way to deal with something like that craving is really just to take a deep breath. Like when you notice that coming up, just take a nice deep breath. That'll center your nervous system a little bit. And then just notice the craving. You could even notice where you might feel it in your body. This is a mindfulness technique, by the way. And just kind of notice how that feels. And then remember that you're choosing something, right? And just remember that you're choosing something. Kira has a question, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I've only listened to the first half of the first meeting, so I'm not sure if you went over this yet. I know you have talked about the combination of high fat, high carb, and that being a really big sort of blood sugar spiker.
Yeah.
And I have, since you said that a couple of years ago, I've always had the question of like, when is something when do you consider something high fat? When do you consider it high carb? Like what's sort of I know it's not exacting, but sort of what is the general slice threshold of that?
So like how you might consider it or measure it.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
how.
Okay. So without trying to make things complicated, you know, carbs in general, I mean, you could measure carbs, right? For example, and if you're on a ketogenic diet, for example, you would be eating, your goal would be to eat less than 50 grams of carbohydrates a day. Does that make sense? Right? And that would be in a whole day. The average American is probably consuming 300 to 800 grams of carbohydrates a day easily. The recommendation for just being healthy and maintaining average body weight so that you're not spiking your blood sugar, that would be about 150 grams of carbohydrates. Does that make sense? So let's give you like a tangible way to look at that. So let's see, I'm trying to think what would be a good example. Let's see. I'm just going to make sure I'm giving you a good number here. So quick example, a slice of whole wheat bread, just one slice is going to be about 23 to 25 grams of carbs. Right. So right there, you would have, like if you're on a ketogenic diet, that would be half of your carbs for an entire day. And that doesn't include eating vegetables and so forth. And these are fast carbs. So things like pizza, that would be high fat, high carb, right? So combining a grain with a fat like dairy or meat is going to be a high fat combo. Does that make sense? Does that help kind of? And that is actually what it's going to do is it is going to spike your blood sugar, but it's also going to make these things called VLDLs, very low density lipoproteins. Yeah, same with tortillas. So corn tortilla, so quesadilla, that, or a flour tortilla, that's going to be a high carb thing, right? Because I think a tortilla, like a large size tortilla, is probably 30 grams of carbs, somewhere around there. It's more than bread. That is going to be really not good for inflammation in the body. You're going to make these very small lipoproteins, these fats, blood fats that are byproducts of the foods that we eat. And those are the ones that actually are irritants to your arteries, and you don't want them in high levels. And that's one of the reasons we don't want to combine those things together. So what's a low carb with a high fat? Well, a salad would be a low carb with some meat, and you could have, cured meats, you could have grilled meat, you could have cheese, you could have olives, not in this diet, right? But you could have olives, you could have grilled salad. That would be really a lower carb or a slower carb because, the vegetables have carbohydrates, and you could combine it with the fat. The research actually shows that a very high carb and almost no fat diet works for overall kind of weight management and so forth. But let me tell you, it's a very boring diet because fat is a flavoring agent. And in the long term, you need fats for brain health, cell health, that type of thing. But that combination, that's great that I didn't bring that up, but the combination of carbohydrates and fats, like high carb, high fat, that's a recipe for weight gain and really disease. It's dysregulation in our metabolic function, because you are going to get these blood sugar spikes when your body's trying to clear that out. And then an additional byproduct is you're making these very low density lipoproteins, which are inflammatory. They're pro-inflammatory. You produce, yeah.
I was going to say that definitely makes sense, like some of those obvious examples like pizza. And I think where I get curious is like, say within the metabolic reset, say I was cooking sweet potatoes in oil. Is that high carb, high fat?
Yeah. So here's the thing is that a sweet potato, for example, is a higher carb food. But in that case, because of the cellulose fiber that's in that sweet potato, and if you're just baking it, right, and then you're just mashing it down and throwing some butter in there, what'll happen is that fat with that cellulose fiber and the carb is going to slow the way that it's going to actually slow the digestion. So those molecules bind together and they're a little slower when we're digesting the food. And I'll have a slide for next week that shows you the speed of metabolism for fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And fat is the slowest metabolizing macronutrient, meaning it takes a long time for our bodies to process it. And then if you eat those in combination, in that case, you're going to slow down that process. But it's partly because you're not, processing the sweet potato. It has a fibrous, like a cellulose, a plant fiber in it, which slows it down. And now they're even seeing some enzymes that are in fruits and some of these root vegetables that slow down how fast it spikes our blood sugar. So I would definitely just kind of pay attention. How do you feel? But yeah, like we had white sweet potatoes, yams tonight with butter.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a chicken that I made that I broiled in the oven, that was marinated in just lime and salt and pepper and avocado oil.
That's good to know. So I think the gist of it in my brain as I hear you speak is like mixing fats with refined carbohydrates.
Carbohydrates like bread, tortilla, cereal with, milk, that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's actually that kind of, I think that's helpful. Yeah.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah.
You can flavor a lot of things just with olive oil and spices.
Yeah. Olive oil, lime, and salt seem to be just magical ingredients for anything. My favorite dressing is olive oil, lime, salt, and pepper. That's it.
Yeah.
And it tends to work really well, and you can put that on anything.
Now, can we have salt in this diet or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's a great segue into talking about sodium and salt and kind of the misinformation around our diet. So the American Medical Association for years has been saying that we need to eat under 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And most of the sodium that people are getting, and why we see problems with that, is that they're using iodized salt or they're getting it from processed foods where they really do pack it in there for that hyper palatability. The problem is if you're getting natural salt or sodium sources, that's too little. If you're getting that little amount of sodium, you're not going to be getting enough of the other things like magnesiums and other kind of minerals that we need. And like, for example, I'm a member of the American College of Sports Medicine. And on a summer day, the recommendation is that you get 2,500 to 5,000 milligrams of sodium, depending on how much you're sweating. So, and this is, again, an evidence-based recommendation. So it's in contradiction to the medical recommendation. And just a couple of years ago, they did some meta-analysis of all the studies and found that the recommendations were off and that there is no link between hypertension and sodium intake, by the way, and that they're finding people with low sodium intake have more dysregulation because of turgor pressure, which is the water pressure in our cells. And so really, we need to bump up our natural salts. So salting in your food is 100% on par here. That's why we want to add. In fact, I recommend putting a pinch of sea salt in your water and then putting an acid in there. And it actually creates a positive osmotic pressure so that our cells are literally hydrating better. And that's the reason the American College of Sports Medicine recommends that during the summers, because we're perspiring more. And so we need to ingest more sodium so that our cells draw the water in instead of just passing it through the digestive tract. Does that make sense? And it's funny how that this is actually a recommendation that has changed medically, but many physicians are reluctant to kind of re-educate themselves there because it's been such a dogmatic thing for a long time. And so, for example, that first glass of water in the morning, you're going to get more benefit from it with a pinch of sea salt or Himalayan pink salt. and then a squeeze of lemon in it. And you're going to actually absorb that water. Your body, we're remineralizing the salt, and we're going to use that water a little bit more. It'll get into our cells.
So when I have recipes sometimes that I put in salted butter, and it also calls for a teaspoon of salt. I generally don't put the teaspoon of salt in because there's already salt in the butter. Is that okay? Or
I think that's fine if you're doing it for flavor, if that's something just for taste reasons.
but is that
But if you're
preventing
if
get
you're
the level
doing
of
that
salt I
to
need
lower
every
your
day?
salt intake, I wouldn't really worry about that as much. Again, consult your doctor before you make any big changes.
Right.
But the reality is that, if you're getting natural sources of salt, it's even sea salt, tasteless, salty. We use iodized salt again so that we don't get scurvy, but it's good for the thyroid. That's actually what I meant. But if you're just trying to lower your sodium intake, you may be doing yourself a disservice, because you need those minerals to actually create osmotic differences that pull water. It's all electrochemical, and there's the potential around the cell. That's why a little bit of acid and a little bit of the mineral salt actually help you hydrate more. Remember, horses get salt licks. It helps them hydrate.
Right.
Us too. So you don't need to be scared of salt. We want to
Okay.
use it, tastes good. It's actually a great flavoring agent.
I was trying to think when it talked about drinking the water and putting in a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
Mhm.
Actually, an hour later, it gave me diarrhea.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
About
could
an hour
play
later.
with that. So try a teaspoon, just try a little bit.
Try a
Because
little
I
bit.
often,
Okay.
my water, actually, I usually put a splash of apple cider vinegar or lemon. If I don't have lemon, it's apple cider vinegar and then a pinch of salt. But yeah, it could be a little disruptive if you haven't been doing that regularly.
Okay.
So again, just paying attention to your body and how it responds, and, not going overboard. That could be helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions? And if we don't have any, I wanted to share 2 resources with you that are really easy resources. Let me do this really quick. Oh, Dan, can you enable my ability to share a screen? It told me I'm not allowed.
How do I do this? Share. Start sharing. Okay, you should be good to go.
Yes, thank you. You got it. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen. So I've pulled up 2 websites that I really like, and these are 2 folks that are great resources for any kind of recipes and just even ideas around any kind of dietary stuff. They're actually very good. So Nom Nom Paleo it was founded by a woman who's actually a pharmacist, lives in San Francisco, and she got so successful that she got to quit being a legal drug dealer. That's what she says. And she has a beautiful website. And what's nice about her website is you can notice right here, she has a whole series of Whole30 based recipes that are outstanding. They're delicious. In fact, this month, because a lot of people do Whole30 in January. That's one of the reasons we do it. But one of the reasons a lot of people do it is it's just a great kind of reset. And you can see these 3 pictures here are all Whole30 recipes that she's done. So Zuppa Toscana, it's paleo, gluten-free, and Whole30. Then she's got char sui chicken. She does a lot of Asian stuff. That's her heritage. And then shrimp stuffed mushrooms. And again, Whole30. And so I think it's a great resource to play with. I've done a ton of her recipes, and not one has been bad. And so this is a great place. If you're feeling a little stuck, or I don't know what to do, I don't want to just eat vegetables and protein, this is a great place to get resources on great recipes. And she's, you know, I 100% endorse her. She uses all the right fats, all the right oils, all that good stuff. So Nom Nom Paleo. The other person I really enjoy is Danielle Walker's Against the Grain. And again, coming from, these are people that have been in this kind of community for well over a decade. And again, we're not going to be going to the ice cream, but she has incredible recipes that are low carb, low glycemic, don't have grains, like even these gluten-free crusts and so forth. She uses alternative methods, and they're not grain-based. And she's legit. Her recipes are outstanding. These are gourmet level. Serve them to your friends. They would never know that it's really good for them. They feel decadent. Does that make sense? Or questions on that? I wanted to share one more thing with you guys today, which we didn't talk about last week, but you know, since we are talking about fats, I wanted to talk about the fat quality that we're doing. And oh, that's not the one. Hateful Eight. See. There we go. That's a movie, The Hateful Eight. So let me show this to you. So when we're looking at food, right, one of the reasons we're eating the way that we're eating is we're looking at food quality. And we want, you know, high food quality, because that matters. What we ingest is so important. It's, you know, either medicine or poison. And fats are something that are used in a lot of foods because it's a flavoring agent. We need fats in our diet, right? Essential fats. But because of the low fat kind of misguidance that we've had for the last 50 plus years, unsaturated fats have become very popular, and again, being promoted as healthy for you. And in that kind of line, what happened is that the food industry jumped right on board because they had access or the ability to get these very inexpensive seed oils that they could incorporate into food and then label it as healthy because they were unsaturated fats. And that's how we got margarine, for example, and how we got trans fats. It came out of that kind of understanding, and then just kind of how everybody ran with it. And now these are prolific. These oils are prolific, and these are the oils that you see everywhere. So if you go to a restaurant, they're cooking with canola or some blend of soy, cottonseed, safflower. These oils are industrial oils, meaning that originally most of these were used for lubricating machinery, you know, protecting equipment from rust, that type of thing. But then the food industry figured out how to chemically clean them, and then without any testing, feed them to human beings. And so they're everywhere. So every restaurant, their deep fat fryer is most likely canola oil. These oils, so it's canola, corn, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran. Grapeseed oil, for example, was a brilliant profit center for the wine industry, because they, you know, as a waste product of pressing grape seeds, they had all these seeds that they were just throwing away. And somebody had the great idea, hey, those have an oil in there. We could press those and then sell them to people because they're unsaturated. And guess what? It turned into a very popular oil. And now you see that in a lot of processed foods. These are all in processed foods. These foods have been linked to dementia, obesity, metabolic disease, type 2 diabetes, and other degenerative diseases, because when our body tries to assimilate these highly processed oils, what we create is deficient cell walls. We create so when you have a bad cell wall, the little receptors that are in your cells that interact with your bloodstream and help bring nutrients and other signaling chemicals into your cells, they become very stiff. And that's something that can happen. This is actually linked to heart disease, these oils, again, because they're inflammatory. They come into our bodies and we release something called cytokines. They're really disruptive to the metabolic cycle in your mitochondria. And so we see things like obesity associated with these, and they're just starting to do research on this. So I highly recommend avoiding these fats. And we don't want to ingest these. We want to focus on things like olive oil, butter, ghee, coconut oil, maybe avocado oil is a good choice for high heat cooking. These are fats that have been around for a long time. They're lightly processed, even though there's some processing that goes on there, but they're things that really are in a more natural state, and humans have eaten for a long period of time. And I wanted to touch on that as a great kind of little bonus on how we can clean up our diets a bit and take into, even post these 3 weeks that we're just using when we either cook or dress our foods, that we're using oils and fats that are better for us. Any salad dressing at the supermarket, even the organic stuff, is going to have maybe corn, canola, soy, safflower. These are common oils that you're going to see even in organic foods. It's still organic crap. Like I've told people forever, yeah, Whole Foods has a bunch of organic crap as well as good food, but there's plenty of organic crap there. Any questions? We're kind of coming to the end of our 45 minutes. We try to set this aside for the questions and maybe just kind of enriching what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Rosa, oops, go ahead.
I'll throw in as a resource that on YouTube, there's a lot of really great videos from Dr. Eric Berg, B-E-R-G. If you want to learn a little bit more about, inflammatory oils and that kind of stuff, he's got some real short, 5-10 minute videos on that kind of thing, as well as he's kind of a keto advocate and talks about metabolism, and he can get deep in the science if you want to dive down that rabbit hole in a very understandable way. Just, it's one resource I want to throw out there.
Cool. I like that. Yeah. So Eric Berg, very good resource. And, there's so many good people out there. It's just kind of navigating to the ones that are better. And that would be a great choice. So maybe we'll pull a couple of those videos and share the links, if you want to pump in there something that might be short and beneficial. I wanted to address Rosa's question. She's doing well, right? The morning's good, but then you have that witching hour. I like that, the witchy hour. That 3 to 7, that kind of, you get the little cravings and so forth. So this is a time that you could, again, being aware, noticing why. Whenever you have a craving, there are different types of hunger. In the mindfulness world, that we have 2 types of hunger. We have physical hunger, which is that real need for nutrients. And then we have something called heart hunger, which is a hunger that needs to feed a deficiency in maybe connection or just feeling better or going outside or whatever it is. And so when you have that craving, that moment or that craving, you can stop for a moment. You can notice, where do I feel the hunger, right? Know, where do I feel it? So typically, if we have real biological hunger, you're going to feel lightheaded a little bit, or you might have some rumbling in the belly, that real kind of physical hunger. Heart hunger often is going to feel like, I want to eat something, but I don't know what, right? Or I'm feeling a little anxious, or I'm feeling a little low, right? And if you're noticing that, you can decide, do I need to eat something or do I not need to eat something? And if the answer is yes, and again, I'm not telling you one way or the other, yes or no, then picking again something that's going to be a little bit more satiating. So what are the most satiating nutrients? Protein, right? So protein and fibrous foods. So in this case, you might have some things like beef jerky around, or some snacks that you enjoy that are kind of under the umbrella of what we're trying to do right now. And then just have those handy, have those available. And go to something that's a little bit better. Even if you're fasting, whatever, if you have that little snack, go for it. If you're listening to your body and I really am in need of food, because that may be a signal just saying, I haven't eaten enough today. So somebody asked, would it be okay to put caption or captions on next time, please. Oh, yeah. I don't know how to do that.
I
Have
don't
you
know
ever
if
done-
Zoom will automatically convert captions real time.
Does it? Maybe?
I'll look into that. I don't think it does it real time that I know of.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I've never used that, so I don't know. But yeah, if we can, we'll try to do that. We'll look into it. I just found apps.
Yeah, we'll look into it for sure. Great
But
idea.
does that help? And that actually is another strategy, is have the food, one of the easiest things that we can do to, like, if you don't want to drink, don't have booze in the house. Right? If you don't want to eat cake, don't have cake in the house. But if you want to have snacks around, have those things in the house, the things that that are on the go-to list. Does that make sense? And so that's creating an environment for success. And that's just one of the easiest strategies that we can have is, because it's a hassle to get in the car at 7 o'clock when you've already settled in after work and go to the supermarket. But we've all done it, made the run for the ice cream, or somebody in the house goes, yeah, let's get some ice cream. So again, just setting yourself up for success by having those foods around. And we'll talk a little bit about food prepping and that kind of thing, and how we can kind of, again, create the environment to be more successful with the goals that we have, if that makes sense. Does that help, Rosa? Okay, cool. Any last questions? Because then I'm going to cut you guys loose on a beautiful Wednesday night after a chilly day.
So actually, the solution to the ice cream was I had strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and pineapple
Yeah,
for a dessert.
that's beautiful. So fruit is a good, it can be a very good snack. And what we do is we get frozen blueberries and frozen strawberries, or we'll freeze them. And that can also give you some of the textural benefit, the cold, or even the creamy. Like on Nom Nom, she has a bunch of frozen fruit blended things that she does that are a great substitute for ice cream or whatever. But that's a great strategy. I'm not so scared about the sugar in fruit, especially if it's just the fruit and you're not processing it, because it does change the way we metabolize it. Like if you put things in a smoothie, for example, it does convert to sugar much quicker because you've now destroyed the cellulose fiber, which slows down how quickly it goes into your intestines. That's one of the reasons I'm not like the biggest fan of just fruit smoothies and stuff. It's high sugar ingestion is what it is, masquerading as something that's healthy.
When I look at ingredients in the store and stuff, I mean, some items are going to have sugar in it. It's if you see additional sugar added, then I avoid those products.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common thing that they'll do it, but there's plenty of it that's available that it's just the fruit. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that's great. I'm super happy that you guys were here. We'll see you guys on Sunday, and good luck. Keep going.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Jose.
Have a beautiful evening.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Cheers.